need to get this one.
Oh, it's right here. Yeah. All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first order of business is the oath of office of the two new board members, Colleen Stefka and Ron Briggs. If I get both of you, please stand. Raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Ronald Briggs,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties as
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties as
general
member
board member
of the board
of the Board of
of
Education
Education
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Right. Our next item on the agenda is I'm going to ask for a motion to nominate someone for the president of the Board of Education. Do I have any nominations? Martha?
I nominate Daniel Cash.
Do you have a second on that?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Do you accept?
Yes, I will accept. Because that'd be a good discussion. All right.
If you will all please vote, those not voting online, you can just.
I, because I don't have a computer.
Okay.
Aye.
So we have 7 yes. And I'm now going to have you stand down for the.
Now the camera goes to you.
Candles.
Raise your right hand. I, Daniel Cash,
I, Daniel Cash,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of
of
the State of New York,
the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and I will faithfully discharge
the duties as
the duties as
President
President
of the Board of Education
of the Board of Education
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my abilities.
Congratulations.
Oh, I get it. That was perfect.
And Daniel, you're now presiding over the meeting.
Okay, no pressure. So I will attempt to do a passable job at this first one. I promise to be more prepared next time. Bug Rick. Okay, so the next order of business is 3B, nomination of board vice president. The recommended action is a motion to nominate someone as vice president of the board. Does anybody have any nominations?
I would like to make a nomination. Dan Martin.
Does anyone second?
I'll second that.
Do you accept? All right, there we go. Oh, a discussion. I'm very happy that this nomination is happening because Dan knows what he's doing.
More percent.
That's after that.
That's right.
That's right. So,
Voting is open. Assuming you're not voting online, please state your.
I,
That's 7 yes. Okay, my rodeo is just about over. Please raise your right hand. I, Daniel Martin,
I, Daniel Marvin,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the
of
Constitution
the State of New York,
of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and I will faithfully discharge
the duties as Vice President
the duties as Vice President
of the Board of Education
of the Board of Education
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my abilities.
Congratulations.
Okay, next up is 4A for the good of the cause. Do we have any comments? Schedule speak.
I'll check my email real quick. I did not receive any earlier.
Anyone?
No, I have no email.
Moving on to 5A, the consent agenda. The recommended action is to approve the following items which are included in the consent agenda. 8B, excuse me, 8B, appointment of district officers. 8C, appointment of the following other positions. 8D, bonding of personnel. 8E, designations. 8F, authorizations. 9A, minutes. Does he read all these?
Yes.
If I start going astray, you guys just like. 11A, BOCES cooperative purchasing participation. 11B, cell phone approval. 11C, resolution for disposal of personal property. And 11D, special education. Do we have a motion?
Yes.
Colleen?
Second.
Martha, second.
Ask if anybody wants any polls.
Oh, does anybody want anything pulled from the consent agenda before we proceed? All right.
Discussion on 8E.
Mhm.
Some clarification on the meal price. Does the elementary school get ice cream or something for an extra 50 cents compared to the middle high school?
It should be the same. Yes, it should be the same price.
Okay, is
75,
it-
yes. There's not, yes.
Because there's two different ones listed, so I just want to
Right.
make sure that it's,
No, they both should be 275. Even though we're not charging them. But for like seconds and things like that, yes. Yeah.
So no ice cream.
No ice cream, they don't sell ice cream in elementary school.
Yeah. No, I saw that too. And I thought,
No, it should be 275 for lunch.
And do we give seconds to the students if they come up or no?
They gotta pay for seconds.
Okay, full price for seconds?
Yes, these prices
Okay.
right here.
Okay.
How should I spell?
in favor, aye.
And Colleen?
Aye.
7 yes.
Okay. Moving on to 6A, the superintendent's report.
All right, thank you, President Cash. So we are nearly 2 weeks removed from graduation, which was spectacular. So I thank our board members who were able to attend and just witness. It was just amazing. And for me, to see that for the first time, it was cathartic to see everything come together in such glorious fashion. But it's been nearly 2 weeks since then, and we are entering, I think, a very exciting time period for the district in terms of this week and what our summer has to offer. So I put the lens on when I assumed this position last year. My first day was August 1st of the previous school year, and from that point, the planning for the start of the school year should already be done. And so to have arrived during then and to have the opportunity to meet everyone in the district and get my bearings and unpack boxes, not have my wife throw things at me, and to have everything set up for the first week of school. That was a challenge. Plus, we had the American Rescue Plan, as the former board members may remember. So that glorious quandary of how are you going to spend $800,000 without knowing any of the groups, having just arrived here. So now it's July 6th, and I feel blessed to have a proper summer to implement a variety of really exciting things that we've talked about over the course of the year. And today was the start of that work. So as you all may recall from the last meeting, the board formally appointed 14 department leaders. And today was the first day of 2 days of working the administrators and the department leaders to train in something we're calling observable impact. And basically observable impact is that we don't make decisions instructionally based on gut or conjecture. We make decisions based on that which we can see in the classroom and can articulate and validate through the use of observable impacts. And so it's an exciting time for the district because those 14 department leaders effectively are operating as instructional leadership for the team for the district that hasn't been in existence to my knowledge. And so it's a tremendous asset for the administrative team to have our leaders who are really on the ground floor speaking truth to the initiatives and action steps that the district is taking. So I'm extremely pleased to have that take place. And today was absolutely wonderful. I look forward for the next day as well. Building on that theme, we also have over the course of the summer, the continuation of our strategic plan. And so I know there's a future agenda item on here in which the board will be asked to reflect upon its goals for the year. And those are based on the previous strategic plan. And those goals are great. And I think they're a wonderful anchor for the board, for the district over this next year. But I'm also extremely excited to continue the work of the strategic plan, which is a multi-phase process. And like so many processes over the last couple of years, this one was derailed by COVID. So we had really good momentum going with our shareholders that were involved in the early stages of the strategic plan. We assembled our data from the community and school. We met twice. And the purpose of those meetings is to re-energize our district mission statement, and then also to contrive a district vision statement and to articulate the difference between those two things. And so far we've developed some really great drafts for our mission statement that at the culmination of this first stage will be presented to the board for your consideration and review. But that work was supposed to culminate mid-June. Unfortunately, our facilitator had COVID and was backlogged. And so we're picking up the football, if you will, on August 11th. We're going to combine our last two sections to create our district vision statement with our shareholders. And so I think the board can anticipate in our meeting in September, our first one, that we will have a district vision and mission statement to present. And so much of the work that we'll be doing will be tied to that. That's really our why of how we as a district operate and what our values are as an institution. But I'm excited because this work of the department leaders that we're doing is kind of like a neural network where we have a system in place that will be supporting throughout the year, where those 14 department leaders can bring back information that will be utilized in the creation of goals for the strategic plan. And the whole point of a strategic plan is to have goals, and not just goals that are not observable, but goals that are based in data that can be measured and with clear action steps, so we can look at what's working and lean into that, and look at what's not working and lean away from that. So I'm excited because these two things, the confluence of these two things, is happening just at the right time. And we're coming out of, I don't want to say this too naively, but it's possible. We're coming out of pandemic 3.0 with a sense of hope and opportunity that I think was delayed last year, but I have a feeling that this September we're going to be guns blazing, and we're going to have this new opportunity with strategic plan and department leaders to work through. So those two things I'm extremely excited about. Otherwise, we have a series of trainings taking place over 2 weeks in August. Those are centered around how do we move the needle on students who have regressed instructionally due to pandemic impact. And those are centered primarily around what we call RTI, or response to intervention. And basically, students are separated into tiers based on data that looks like that one out.
Yeah.
It might need to be charged. You can plug it in over there if you need to. Students are separated into tiers based on data that is taken routinely. In elementary school, they have testing Tuesdays, and kids are pulled out of the classroom and they have quick 5-minute, 10-minute tests that's logged, and then our newly appointed district data coordinator, Amanda Blacksmith, logs that and measures it, and then we can share that with our department leaders over time. So I'm excited about that one too. What else? We also are working on creating teacher websites. Tim Baker, who is present, is going to be assisting in that regard. He has an aptitude for that. These screens, which prior to my arrival were non-existent in the district, we have leaned in heavily to what we're calling a 5-year instructional technology plan that was just submitted to the state. And the whole notion of that is it's like a grocery store, first in, first out, right? So we want to get the old technology out, and we want to get the new stuff in so that we remain cutting edge and innovative. And we've designated a number of our staff to support those efforts in the classroom. We learned through experience that just handing someone a device without the proper training and support is useless, essentially. So we have a number of initiatives in place. We ordered clear touch devices like these. We ordered ViewSonic boards that are similar to these, just a little more rugged, if you will, but also very flexible. And those will be installed over the next few weeks, which is great, because in a perfect world, we would order the technology, we would have it in place around now, and that would give us time to install in July, and then have all of August actually train people. So the first time they're not using it isn't when there's 16 students looking at them. And that's what we're gearing up for. So that's all very positive as well. I know I'm being excessively verbose on a July 6th meeting, but I just want to share all the things that are going to be kind of ticking through the summer. And I promise not to be so talkative in the future on this. So we have our technology that's coming through. Tim Baker and Joe Ballou have been working with some students who are gaining summer employment through the district to clean our Chromebooks, our one-to-one devices, which is great. Everyone wins on that. We were quite delayed in having those both physically but technologically cleaned in advance of the students returning last year. And our estimates are that they will be done as early as next week. So we're killing it. And I applaud you, Tim, for taking leadership in that area, and for our students for doing the same. And when they're done with technology, they're going to help paint. So what can I say, right? We're hitting all the bases there. Other than that, with the addition of training, the big pieces that when I think about what the next year looks like, with our community school coordinator, Keith Clark, coming on board over the summer to start making connections with various partners, and leading into those, and making our students and families feel more engaged and wanting to come into our buildings on a more routine basis for various activities. I also think that part of our job, particularly at the administrative level, is to over-communicate this year in a really profound way. We've done a lot of analysis this past year. We put various things in place that represent changes to people. We've unified the start time in both buildings. That will yield tremendous positives for students and for staff, but it's a change, and that will require logistical consideration and communication. So the unified start time is something that I'm very much paying attention to and wanting to communicate with families well in advance, all of the logistics of that as well. But back to the broader point of when I think about procedurally the theme of the year, it's really about being slow and intentional and guiding the changes that the administration and the board have co-created for this year, and making people feel valued in the ownership of those changes. So it's not, we're not looking to have knee-jerk reactions to anything. We're looking to fully implement the changes that we put in place at the end of this year. So those are some of the things that are exciting. We're starting our ESY and summer programming next week. And just as an aside to the board, I do have recent comparative graduation and Regents data that's compiled into a single document that I will be sharing with you via email. And feel free to send any questions you have with regards to that. But that will become a piece of a larger puzzle of data that Amanda Blacksmith, our new data coordinator, will present to the board on various times throughout the year. That's my report.
Thanks. Okay, moving on to 6B, information for the board. So there's some links there to the summer law conference and the NISBA convention in October. Is there anything to be said about that, or is that just there for our
If anybody's
education?
interested in going to the summer law conference, or we should talk about the NISBA convention, probably.
Next up is 7A policy review. This is information. What would Rick normally do here? What would Rick do? Just read through the policy. Okay. So this is the following policies required annual review. Code of Conduct 5300 is currently under review with changes. Investments, purchasing policy, attendance, and free and reduced meal price meal services.
And if I could just speak to some of those changes in particular, and you'll note in the executive content, there's some information in there as well. But when we think about district policies, the code of conduct is the big one. It's what drives staff and student interaction, expectation, communication with parents. So I alluded to having arrived August 1st last year. And that is not conducive to the approval timeline that one would expect for implementation for the next year. So one of the things that I know the administrative team will be working on over the summer is a thorough review of our code of conduct to ensure that it represents some of the initiatives that the district is currently undertaking. Just anecdotally, for example, we've gone to one-to-one devices for students, and our code of conduct doesn't have sufficient procedural language about what happens when something is damaged. That's district property, that's instructional technology, or what would constitute a security breach, things like that. So we want to update some of those things based on the initiatives that we have. But we also want to be mindful as well that, the code of conduct is something that is, I don't want to make it sound like the Constitution, but it is a living document in a sense, and it really does need to evolve with the tenor of the school. So I would anticipate that towards the end of the summer, the dog-eared pages of the code of conduct that we will be discussing as an admin team will then be brought to the board for discussion and consideration and possible request for amendment. In which case, if anything was amended, we would do the traditional policy updating where we would have a first read, public comment, and then the following meeting, we would vote on that. The other policies, investments, purchasing, attendance, free and reduced meal prices, have they're essentially things that we oversee every year. They will not have the potential for change to the degree that the code of conduct is based on.
Let me ask a question. So the full text of the current code of conduct would be available on board docs?
Yes.
Yes, under policies.
So the 5300, is that a link?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You can click on the link
We'll
that's
open it up.
there,
Yeah.
or if you go under your board docs and then policies on the right, you go down.
Still learning.
Yeah, it's
There's
good.
quite a lot there.
And one thing you'll, since we're on this discussion of policy, one thing you, that I will likely bring up is, we as a district have not formalized our graduation requirements on a local level. And we do some important things that I feel it would be appropriate for the district to validate fully. with a policy endorsed by the board acknowledging those specific graduation requirements that are unwritten, but are a part of our fabric. Those include community service, 30 hours of community service, and a senior capstone project, which is a bit, it's the culminating event for seniors, and it's a big deal. They start on it right now. So that's something you may expect to hear from me about over the next few meetings as well.
Moving on to 8A, meeting dates. Recommended action is motion to adopt the 2022-23 Board of Education meeting calendar as per the attached document. Can we have a motion? For
Yes.
discussion? Yes, Colleen, second?
Yes.
Dan? Looks like we'll be going back to Wilmington. Exciting, I haven't done that yet.
Well, it's a question mark there.
Wilmington?
So I also printed this out for everybody because there are some things in red that need to be addressed,
Yeah, like January 17th.
like January 17th, like April 4th.
I strongly suggest we move January 17th for sure. And April 4th, anybody here.
So what would you? So would you propose the 24th of January or the 31st?
Maybe 24th. Because then
I would, yeah,
we have a meeting again on February 7th.
I would do January 24th.
Okay. So I will change the 17th to the 24th. And then what about April 4?
Then last year we waited until we were closer in to see if we needed that meeting at that time.
So at that April 4th meeting, it is generally a time when we would, do we adopt the budget then? Something happens at early in that month, because
Probably closer to
BOCES
the
budget,
25th.
the 25th, because that's when the BOCES budget vote is.
When do we come back from Easter break? The 17th?
April, yes.
It would be 18th, couldn't we?
Mhm.
And we just need the two weeks from now. Yeah. That's the effort's choice. Either that or we didn't, we can't do 3 meetings in March.
We have done that before.
I was gonna say, yeah, we've done that 3 meetings in March. But does it depend on the budget calendar too with
Yes,
Right.
because
what we're
typically
getting?
What we're getting from the state.
Yeah. state doesn't have until, they have off until April 1st. So,
Table that until we know more, that April date. We have to set that now.
So we could just put to be determined. And then the July 4th, the reorg meeting for next year is a Tuesday, so we can move it to Wednesday or the following week. I think we had so many days to.
We're supposed to have this one yesterday, but we want to do the day after.
I believe we have technically until the 11th.
Wasn't that just conflict and, yeah, so it's just,
It's still, I mean, just
yeah, I thought. I thought-
observationally, the day after July 4th is not an opportune time for a meeting. But I don't have a vote to say. So
We could do Thursday.
Thursday makes more sense.
The 6th. July 6th.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I'm gonna change the calendar as we discussed, and then I'll put in here. after attached changes. Discussion. Okay, do you want to, vote, then vote? Oops, I gotta open it.
Until I'm proud, I don't even know what I'm doing.
Hi.
So,
Mine's not popping up.
Yeah, mine's not popping up.
so it's all weird. Can everybody then just vote aye or nay?
Aye.
Okay. So hard. I don't know why, but not president vote for everybody. So 7 yes, right?
Okay, so moving on, 8B through F is in the consent agenda, as is 9A. Next one is 10A, teaching staff appointment. Recommended action is upon recommendation of the superintendent, appoint Teresa Pena, certification pending to the position of 6th grade ELA teacher in the middle high school, replacing Jamie Mercier. In the tenure area of childhood education to begin when certification is obtained for a 4-year term tentatively scheduled to conclude 4 years from that date. For the 2022-2023 school year, the salary will be $54,947, step 13BA of the Lake Placid Education Association negotiating agreement, July 1st, 2023. Dates. Do we have a motion?
Yes.
A second.
Second.
Collins?
I know. Right.
Yeah, as we replace board members, we're gonna double up on names.
Right,
We're trying to save on the
Yeah,
verbiage here on the nameplate.
right.
Aye. Just call the question.
Thank you. Was there discussion? Did you have
Yeah,
some
that's it.
discussion?
Oh, sorry, yes.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
The only thing I would just notate is that this language with the appointment is specific language that you will see oftentimes when someone either is en route to certification or was certified in a previous area and hasn't been certified in the new area they've been assigned, or because they're in the federalist system, they, in this instance, the individual has years of quality instructional experience in the state of Texas, but that does not transfer to the state of New York. And so we set the salary based on the LPEA agreement, years of experience, but the certification is what holds up the tenure track timeline. So until we have formal notice of certification from the teach system in New York State, that person, their probationary period in the district does not start. So,
7 yes. Did that answer your question?
Yes. Well, when discussion's over, just call the question. So I'm confused when I should vote.
Oh, right,
Clear, yeah.
right, yes,
There's a
no,
motion, a second, and all of a sudden we vote.
right. There was, yes, right, it just forgot for the discussion.
Small detail.
I wrote in big letters, ask for discussion. Should be all posted notes to remind me eventually. Okay, moving
You're
on.
supposed to be helping it.
Dan, number 2, what's going on over there?
All right, moving on to 10B, District Technology Coordinator Appointment. Recommend action upon recommendation of the superintendent approve the appointment of Timothy Baker as District Technology Coordinator beginning July 1, 2022. Salary will be set at $56,785. Do I have a motion? Thank you. A second.
Second.
And discussion.
Welcome aboard. It feels like you're very proficient at what you're doing, buzzing around the room, plugging things in and keeping us on task. So it's awesome.
You did very good.
All right.
I'll vote aye if there's no further discussion.
7 yes.
Congrats on your appointment, Tim.
Thank you.
Real awkward about the last couple of days, you know, and we said no.
That's the roll of the dice I live in, man.
That's right. Okay, 11A through D is all under the consent agenda.
Ask if there's questions.
Are there any
11
questions
for next time?
for special education? Are there any questions next time? There's some executive content. If not, we'll move on. What questions?
Okay.
All right, so the next thing up is 12A for the good of the cause.
There are no emails.
Okay, any other?
Explain to me a little bit for the good of the cause. If someone's physically present, they just raise their hand, they want to be heard and speak to the board, is that what it is? And or an email to Karen?
There was, I guess for the good of the cause, then there was information for the board and the executive content. Did you read the letter from, what's his name? No,
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Under information for the board.
yes,
Yeah.
from Zachary Dahl. That probably was a good of the cause. That's probably where I should have put it.
Oh,
It was a
okay.
letter received.
Do we want to read that now? Or do we want to read it where it is now?
I think it's appropriate to read it now.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, so I will read it. Dear Timothy Seymour, I am writing you in concern with the Lake Placid Central and Elementary Schools having a resource officer. I know that in the not so distant past, the school or board made a decision to not employ the use of a resource officer. I am not privy to the exact details as to why the decision was made. The reasons, though, whatever they may be, are far outweighed by the carnage that is plaguing our nation's schools. With nothing being done at any level, I would submit that we must start at the very local level of the Lake Placid school system itself. While I can see that the presence of an officer in the school may be something of an image not in line with the carefree life we live in the Adirondacks and want for our children. Though I firmly believe this is a very real and useful tool the school could implement to deter potential violence. The reality is your staff and students alike already know the sad realities that they face every day just by going to school. I think by employing or at least reestablishing the discussion about having a resource officer at the schools would show the children, the faculty, the families, and the taxpayers, I am one of such, that you value their lives and are willing to protect them. Thank you for your time and consideration. Zachary Dahl.
Thank you for that.
I do have to ask, does every school board offer good of the cause at the beginning or the end? I know that was something we adopted when Roger was here a year or so ago. We used to just do it at the beginning of the meeting. Is that something that's required to offer both sessions?
So if I remember correctly, why we changed it to the beginning and the end, like if people were to be sitting here and if there was anything that was voted on, it gave them the opportunity to ask questions, yeah, or to make comments.
Without having to wait until the end of the meeting.
We'll
Or the
wait,
next-
no,
Start of the next meeting.
Exactly.
wait, the next meeting. That's why we put another one back at the end of the
Yeah.
meeting.
But then if you have people coming to speak to the board, they don't have to sit through
Right,
the entire board.
Correct.
Board meeting to wait.
But to answer your question, Colleen, I've seen it both ways.
Okay, yeah, just curious.
One further question. So if someone is watching remotely now, is there some mechanism whereby he or she could ask a question of the board?
Yeah, Karen, can you articulate those?
yeah, so this monitor here
Okay,
is people, I don't believe anybody's actually logged in.
okay, I see.
Would be able to go in, starting with our next board meeting. I think what I'm gonna do is just put in the notice that the board meeting can be watched live on the big screen, and they'll just be muted, and we'll just go from there. If we don't have people come on, and to me, it just seems simpler to just announce it out. Does anybody have any issue with that?
Yeah, I just want the public to have an opportunity to speak to the board if they wish to do so, and make it easy for them. So.
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
why-
and if
that's my
they,
issue.
And if they were to be watching and they email Karen,
Right.
she checks her email again.
Right, right. That's why I keep checking my.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
Okay. So the next up is discussion, 13A committee appointments.
So that's another thing that I actually printed out for you. For you to look over and make some, decisions on if any of our new members want to be part of a committee.
Having to reorg work of this.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be done tonight. It's
Okay.
just as information. But it's just a discussion. For now.
One thing that would be helpful for me is those of you who have been on the board for a number of years, if maybe you could articulate the functioning of some of these committees that have not really convened since I've been here. I know that the policy committee has met. And
The audit committee.
the audit committee has met.
Health and
Accepting that.
safety is now kind of under what Dana's been doing with meeting with the department heads
Right, and then the monthly reports.
and the monthly reports.
What was the impetus for that committee previously? Because I know that was a change, some of you, without me even realizing it was a change, and I want to be sensitive to that. Was this more thinking about planning for a potential building project?
No, I think it's what is required, and we were meeting quarterly. And in the end, it ended up being a lot of the community members
Mhm.
wouldn't attend just because of the busy schedule that they're part of. So when we started with department meetings, it just made sense because meeting with them weekly and then providing the board a monthly update on those meetings, it's kind of covering it. And in fact, more information is being put out there on a more regular basis than a quarterly meeting.
So the statement that it was, the purpose is to monitor the conditions of school buildings and remedy serious conditions of school buildings, that really, the purpose has morphed into something different, or is that still the purpose?
Yeah, that's all part of the discussion. So I meet with all the department heads on a weekly basis. We talk about everything, how things are going, things that need to get done. And then that is shared with everyone here on a monthly basis. Just kind of keep that up to date.
One way that I've seen this done elsewhere is that the state requires districts to conduct a building condition survey. Usually it's within a 5-year period. It used to be that you could apply for that based on the needs of the district. Now it's they are assigned based on the state's understanding of what they believe a district needs. Usually they're like, well, who hasn't had a building project next number of years? Those will be within the catchment who are required to conduct a building condition survey. So the building condition survey, you bring in the architect, the district architect, and or you can bid it out, and it's the district is aided X cents per square foot. And so there's two philosophies with the building condition survey. One is we're going to check the boxes to accommodate the requests of the state, but the other is to take advantage of the fact that it is subsidized to have an architect come in and look at our facilities, and they will log everything in the condition of all of our buildings and make recommendations, which could then lead to decisions at the board level as to whether or not we should look at a building project 5, 10, 15 years down the road, and if so, what are the priority items? So I only bring that up because Dana, you've done an excellent job in meeting with the department leaders, and I think those monthly updates to the board on the day-to-day are beneficial. But I wonder if it would be beneficial as well to tag this committee towards that building condition survey when we are assigned it. when a project begins, when a project culminates, and then the punch list when it's all done. Because this speaks to really to the long-term maintenance of our facilities. I don't want to have a committee in place if we're not going to convene. I would feel the disrespectful to you all.
So I think we need to look at policy 8110 then, because it's both. I mean, there's the point in there where it's the quarterly meetings, but then number 2 is, the condition survey that we were just talking about. So that policy probably has to be looked at if we are going to change or move away from having a, health and safety grounds committee.
Is there a preference around the table of whether or not that bifurcated system of updates to the board and just this committee exclusively for long-term upgrades through the building conditions, is that preferable, or would you like to continue in the former status quo before I arrive?
I think the continuing would be a good way to do it. I think that's probably better for getting that information out to the public in a public meeting, as well as keeping the board more up to date. And, I think most people would agree that putting a committee on it is not necessarily the best way to get something done, especially if we have a process that's already working. Throwing a committee at it will not make it any better. I say that as somebody who's on it technically.
Well, we do have a building condition survey coming up in 2023.
Perfect. And do we know if that clock starts January 1, Dana, or? Okay, so we
I
can
just know that we're on the list for 2023.
So we could make some proposed modifications to the policy that makes it clear that the purview of this committee is exclusively with regards to that, and then bring it back to the board for a first read. And if everyone's comfortable, we can move it along.
It's good.
I think, Tim, that I can give you a little input on shared decision. Back in the day, and I'm talking probably 10, 12 years ago, maybe even a little longer, when it first started, it was under Ernie Stratton, the superintendent at the time. It was a very active committee, accomplishing quite a few things within the district. It was a committee where there were probably 15 people that attended, a variety of backgrounds, teachers, school personnel, retired individuals in the community, business owners. It was very effective. And I'm trying to recall some of the things that we accomplished. I think that we did resume writing. We did the career immersion day with the students. I think at the time, at some point, the requirement for the students for the community service came into play for seniors, some of those things. Then the committee went the wayside. And then 3 years ago, Roger tried to revamp it, pulled me back onto it. We tried to get a couple of teachers at the elementary school and at the high school to come on board, a community member. We would try to meet, it just didn't go anywhere. It just fizzled out and was kind of stagnant. People weren't attending the meeting. It just seemed to drop and didn't go too much. And I don't know, it's not necessarily that anyone has lost interest in contributing, but perhaps over the years, various little subcommittees have come up, surface that have taken care of some of those things. So I don't know. And at the time, it might have been a requirement that we have it. And again, I'm not sure what the status is of that now. So. The outline of it sounds probably more impressive than what it was really like at the time. I need to be honest. I mean, we did, again, in the early years, when there weren't as many other subcommittees floating through the district, we did accomplish quite a bit, but some of these other committees have formed since, and so I don't know how relevant it is. I don't know.
So it seems like, just in my reading of the first sentence, that it's kind of like a conduit for other committees. Like I know the ad hoc work through dress code was done in coordination with this. So I think having that flexibility, that makes sense to me, that's beneficial. I'm not sure about the meeting expectations though, like I wonder if that should be modified,
I don't know.
because if it's there just as needed, but then we have standing meetings, I don't know if those two things.
I don't know if you can think about.
Any other discussion on that? Okay. 13B, setting objectives 2022-2023. This is discussion on our board goals and objectives for the coming school year. Revisiting those. So make sure you review those attached documents.
And the second document is in how each of the goals has been achieved. It talks about them underneath each one. Which meeting. So if you scroll through, it says what the goal is and then when it was met.
Any discussion on that?
I would just say review it. If you have ideas on how to make changes or want to see something else,
Bring them forward.
yeah, bring them forward and we will, talk about it here for the next couple of meetings so that, moving forward throughout the year, we're meeting our goals.
Yeah.
As a board and supporting the school, everybody else.
I'm not sure who compiled this. This is wonderful. I don't remember getting something like this last year.
Every year. What I do is I go in and I print off a report out of
And this is
out
great.
of Word docs.
No,
Yeah,
this is really.
that's why when everybody does the, setting,
Yes,
No,
No, but this is great.
Yeah.
I'm sure it took a lot of time. Thank you.
So the only thing about setting objectives for this year is we'll have to wait for the strategic plan. Are we gonna? No,
It won't be ready.
it won't.
No, to give it its appropriate due, the first stage would be for the board to hear and adopt a mission and vision statement in September. And then the next stage would be to meet with specific groups and the department leaders about instructional targets. And that would be done over the course of the school year. And then probably by towards late spring, that's when we would present a full 5-year strategic plan to begin effective July 1, 2023. So it would be good to have this framework in place to have the board to focus.
Okay, moving on to the adjournment phase of the meeting. Next meeting date and location, July 19th and August 9th. Here. Lord willing and the creek will rise. Any old agenda topics? Any new agenda topics?
To the discussion of our retreat for this year, we discussed at some point on.
I think we like discussing that at some point in time.
Well, especially now that we have 2 new board members.
It's true.
We now kind of discussing how you want to, even a board president.
I've actually never been on a board retreat, so we might have those.
Oh,
just-
so-
Sounds like it'll be the
I
best
can't-
one you've ever done.
Yeah, this will be the best one I've ever.
My understanding is what's quick.
Yeah,
You mentioned Hawaii earlier.
yeah, I mean, Hawaii, I mean,
That's part of the agenda. I'd like to just put it out there just for a thought. I know I heard a little chitter chatter about adding the item on there to discuss whether or not it might be advantageous for us to possibly have our board meetings in the auditorium. It's a much larger space. I think it's more inviting if we're trying to encourage the public to come to our meetings. certainly we have the tech man here now that is really, I'm sure, well versed in setting us up in that space. And I just think with COVID and everything, that maybe people would feel more comfortable coming in a larger area. We have had times where we've had almost standing room only this spring in the room, and I don't, just a thought. So I just thought we could add that there for discussion. I don't know if it's complicated to have them in the auditorium, but we've spent all of this money on renovation. It's a beautiful space. Why not use it?
I like the idea.
Put us up on stage, and there we are.
Though if no one comes, it's really, really painfully obvious. that
No,
no one
that's
came.
not right. Well, we won't, yeah, we'll just focus on us and not the audience, but it's a beautiful space. I mean, why not use it?
All right, we'll put that on as, look at that. I don't know how that functions.
Is at the discretion of the board if this is something that could be discussed now or could be discussed at the next meeting?
What are the pros and cons? What are the cons?
Well, I guess we can ask our district technological czar over here.
Or wizard over here.
What are the tech hurdles for moving things into?
We ran stuff there already. We've already had live meetings.
But was that easy or was that?
Yeah, it's just we have network cords running it, so I actually made one for that, the TV last time. Depending on where you want to be, I just need to know what you want to set, how you want to set up. Do you want to be up on the stage? Do you want to be down? But it's not hard to put that together. No harder than doing this either.
Will we move this board table over there or will we use?
No, Bobby sets up tables and we put tablecloths on.
What is everyone's
Could we
feeling?
use these tables over there? So it's kind of like this half circular
Do
thing.
we have space for that though?
Some place to store 'em.
Yeah, right, like I wouldn't have any place to put them.
How often do they actually use the stage area though? Is it used all the time or?
Well, this room is used for other meetings as well.
Right, yeah, we could just
Okay,
take
okay,
credit for
yeah.
that, right. But, even with the blue tables, you can still do not a horseshoe, but more of a.
We could look into some arrangement possibilities and.
We could also
More
just
back
try
next
it.
meeting.
We-
Do
we could-
pilots, right? A couple of
We could try it, see what it's like, and if as a group, we don't like it, well, I don't like this building's going anywhere.
So you're bringing that up about moving over there. And, we're talking about going back to Wilmington, which is a very small space. We cannot bring with us the board. And I don't care. I do think we should go back to Wilmington, but we need to understand that that space is even smaller. It's just one big oblong table that everybody's been sitting at like elbow to elbow.
We're going to have to hold it at the pavilion in Wilmington, an outdoor meeting.
Not in the dates we chose.
No, it'll have to be a spring meeting, at the pavilion, a May meeting or something.
Is the library in Wilmington more spacious? It's small as well. So it sounds like we're gonna try it.
Right.
Sure, let's
Try it.
try
I'd
it.
like to try
Nothing-
it.
See where the harm
nothing
is.
ventured, nothing gained.
So our next meeting is the 19th in the auditorium.
Sure.
Let's get interaction.
Okay. Any other further discussion on that matter? Okay, moving on to 15A, executive session. Let's see, we'd have to have a motion to enter into.
Yep. You have to read motion. for
Oh,
executive.
here we go.
Go ahead.
Recommended action is motion to go into executive session, to discuss special education placements. And Joan has made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I guess we don't discuss it yet, so. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Tim.
Good night, you're in executive session.
We didn't vote. You have to vote.
Oh,
Do I have to vote?
You have to vote to go into executive session.
Oh, let's vote then.
So is everybody just vote?
I like the speech and going through the agenda. I
Well,
like that,
yeah.
that time. Boom, boom, boom.
So as, I did your stuff on my side, good night.
And this
Um,
one.
When you go out of executive session, you can write down the time.
Okay.
And then whoever made the motion.
And what do I do with that information? Just to get my journal?
I probably-
Send it.
I don't think she's
Send it.
going anywhere.